now that we've learned all the connections, I'm just going to write out some words, and as I'm writing, I'll just be talking about the connections and if there's anything interesting about the connection, or just as a reminder to how to connect certain letters. So the first word I'm going to write is very simple because all of the connections, or all of these letters end with, all of these letters begin with one of the variations of the entrance stroke. So what I mean by that is they begin with an entrance stroke, a partial entrance stroke, or an extended entrance stroke. In the word that I'm writing right now, we don't have any words that begin with an overturn or a compound curve, because those are the two most difficult connections. So in all these letters, I'm just finishing the first letter, and then thinking about what letter I'm going into next. So this letter, the last letter of this word, which now you can tell is fabulous, was the letter S. So all of these connections were just this upstroke shape. Now, for instance, the letter A and the letter O, I had to stop part of the way up because I'm connecting to an oval. So as I was writing this, I kept in mind, I'm about to connect to an oval, so I'm not going to make this exit stroke go all the way up to the header line. Okay, so let's do a word that has a lot of overturns and compound curves, and this is a difficult word to write. So I'm going to write the word many, M-A-N-Y. Okay, so this is a compound curve, but we're just going into the letter A, so I'm going to stop before I get back to the header line so that when I connect the oval, that connection looks right. Okay, now I'm going from an A to an N, so I'm going to do the underturn of the A, and then as I come up and around, keep the gap not too big to make the first stroke of the N. Okay, now this stroke is very difficult. We're finishing the N with the compound curve, and then we're going to start the Y with another compound curve. So you really have to think ahead and go slow. So I'm going to make compound curve. Okay, now I'm coming up, and I need to think about coming back around for the next compound curve. Okay, so this is, you can see at the end I got kind of shaky, and that's because the stroke is so wide. We're used to only doing one shape at a time, or just the compound curve shape. So if I were to write this word again, compound curve to an oval. Okay, now we have an underturn to an overturn. Okay, now this last part, I got kind of shaky towards the end because I had a really long way to go in one stroke. So here I'm going to think, okay, compound curve, and then start to come up and around, and I'm going to come down to the baseline at a point and shift my hand over just a little bit so that I can come back up and still be in a comfortable hand position. And then, okay, the next word that I want to write is a fun word for calligraphers to practice. It's very difficult, and practicing this will remind you that calligraphy is all about shapes. So as we've been thinking about all these letters as individual strokes, so the word is minimum, and this word has a lot because it has the letter N and M, which both have compound curves and they both have overturns. So you noticed as we were connecting all these that the most difficult connections is when you are coming from a compound curve or going to either of these shapes. And since the letter N and M have both of those, that makes the word minimum a very difficult word to write by alternating colors, which is difficult. So okay, this compound curve is going into an I, so that's just a normal ending. Okay, now the I is going to go into the N, so I have to go from an underturn directly into an overturn. Okay, then the letter N goes directly into an I, so since the I starts with a normal entrance stroke, we just go back up. Minimum, so then we go I to an M. Okay, so the I is an underturn, and when we come back up, we're going into an M, which is an overturn, so we come up and around. And then this stroke is in the middle of the M. Okay, the next stroke is a compound curve, and we're going from an M to a U. Okay, so this is the compound curve, and come back up. So the letter U is just a normal entrance stroke. The middle stroke with U. So we have minimum. Okay, so we're going from this U, which ends with an underturn, into an overturn for the letter M. And that doesn't really look like a word until you dot the I's. Okay, now that looks more like a word. Okay, so like I said, this is a fun word to practice. It's difficult. It's hard to write it correctly the first time because of all the connections you have to think about. I have practiced writing it like that, so that's why I was able to do it alternating colors like that. Okay, I'm just going to write a couple more words. So I'm going to write the word brush, as in brush lettering. Okay, so this B, we make this underturn shape, and I'm going to make the variation of the R that comes up above the header line, like this. Okay, now the end of the U is an underturn shape, and we're going into a U. Okay, the end of this U, we're going to go into the S, which goes above the header line. Come back down. Okay, the S ends with an entrance stroke, and the H starts with an entrance stroke, so this is a pretty easy connection. Okay, I'm going to write the word lettering, as in brush lettering. The L is kind of a complicated letter to connect to other letters, not because it's a weird connection, but because you have to think, because you're already when you make the L, you're connecting an ascending stem loop to an underturn as you're writing. Okay, now you're coming up with this underturn, and you have to be thinking about what letter you're connecting it to. So I'm connecting it to the letter E, so I'm going to come up and stop up here. So the L looks like an easy, simple letter, but it's actually difficult because you have to combine all these strokes and then remember. So if you were going to go into an overturn or a different shape, that would all be one stroke, and so you have to think about that as you're writing. The letter T to another T. Okay, now I'm going to stop here because I'm going into an R. And then I'm going to go up into the next letter, which is R. I think I might have just said R, but that's an E. Okay, now here, that was incorrect. I want to write lettering, and the letter I starts with an entrance stroke, so I should have continued this up all the way to the header line. Okay, the I ends with an underturn and goes directly into an overturn for the N. Compound curve going into an oval, so we stop. Brush lettering. So you've learned all the connections, you've seen a couple examples. Now you should be able to figure out how to make the connections between the letters, just thinking of it as the end of the first letter joining with the beginning of the second letter. And in all these words that I've written, the basic concept is that every letter is connected by a thin upstroke. So that's another way to think about it. In between each letter is a thin upstroke. So you always, when you go from one letter to the next, you're always joining it by going up. So in order to go up, you have to come down first. So that's the key with this shape. Coming from this shape, you need to go down first in order to come back up. And the reason that this works is because every single letter, when you learn to write each letter, every letter starts at the baseline. Every single letter that you learn to write starts at the baseline, and every letter ends at the header line. So it doesn't matter what stroke it is, they all start at the baseline and end at the header line. So an easier way to explain that is looking at, these are the ways that a letter can start, and all of these strokes start down here at the baseline. It doesn't matter what stroke it is, it starts down here and goes upward. And all of these strokes end at the header line. Which means they end with an upward motion. So it ends with an upward motion, that ends at the header line, and these all start with an upward motion from the baseline. So when you're connecting between the two, you just have to find the connection point, and then it will become an upward stroke. Okay, so I hope all those tips helped. If you have any more questions, just let us know. If there's a specific combination of letters you can't figure out how to write, or you just want to see some examples, we would always love to help. So just reach out to us. You can leave a comment, or you can send us an email, connect with us on Instagram, and we always love to help. So let us know if you have any questions, and thank you for watching.